Thank you, everyone, for coming today. As we pause for a few moments here and then at the cemetery to celebrate and remember the life of Betty Rosenthal. On the inside, whether it is in gray, in white, or in cherry color, we'll start with Ecclesiastes chapter 3. I used to interpret this as the continuum of experience of life. Now I've come more to the conclusion that these experiences described in this prayer or this reading from the Bible is really a blended experience. Both birth and death flow in and out of each other, and healing and pain flow in and out of each other. That's the way life is. We'll alternate lines in this psalm reading responsively. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. Your turn. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. Almost all funerals, Jewish and non-Jewish in this country, use Psalm 23. Like the author King David, we walk today through the valley of the shadow of death, an experience that everyone will experience on the journey of life. And so what does the psalmist praise? That goodness and kindness, as found in Betty's life, will accompany us on that journey. In Hebrew, the first lines are, Adonai ro'i lo achzar, v'nodeshi arbitzeim nechot yenahaleni, nashiv shovei b'maglei tzedek l'man shemo, gam ki elech b'ged salmavet lo irara. Let's read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You guide me in the paths of righteousness for your name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. Prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of God. Our next reading is from the book of Proverbs. So many of these things were part of Betty's life. People trusted in her. She was good to people. She was generous. She was kind. These are all standing qualities of Betty's life, and therefore this is the most appropriate reading. We'll read, again, we'll alternate stanzas here. I'll take the first and the third. You can take the second and the fourth. What a precious find is a woman of valor. Her worth is far beyond rubies. Her husband puts his trust in her and lacks no good thing. She is good to her family, never bad, all the days of her life. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She opens her mouth with wisdom. She oversees the activities of her household and never eats the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her family praises her, and they all say, many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all. Extol her for the fruit of her hand. I often ask the question, what's the reward for a good life? Because we don't always see it. A person that's good sometimes suffers. A person that is miserable sometimes does very nicely, at least in the physical dimension. So this Psalm 128 points out what's the reward? The reward is family and friends that love us, know us, support us, care for us, and together we journey on. We'll read together, Psalm 128. A song of ascents. Happy is everyone who reveres the Lord, that walks in God's ways. You will eat the fruit of your labor. You will be happy, and it shall be well with you. Your children will be like olive saplings around your table. So shall the woman who reveres the Lord be blessed. The Lord bless you out from Zion, and see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life, and live to see your children's children's children. May all be well with Israel. Next reading, The Dash, is a contemporary reading copyrighted in 1996 by Linda Ellis. Really talks about what counts. What counts is not the year of birth and the year of death on the tombstone, but the quality and character of our lives as we go forward. So we'll read again responsively by stanza. I read of a person who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend, referred to the dates on her tombstone from the beginning to the end. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash. That dash represents all the time that she spent alive on earth. Now only those who love her know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? You never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. Always try to understand and be less quick to anger and show appreciation more and love the people in our lives like we never loved before. So when your eulogy is being read, with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? Those who don't know me, I'm Rabbi Mark Raphael. I'm honored to be subbing for Rabbi Lehman, who's on his vacation this week. I am the Rabbi Emeritus of Kehilat Shalom, one of the synagogues in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I did not have the pleasure of knowing Betty, your dear one. And although she enjoyed a full, wonderful 96 years, I empathize with the sadness and loss that her passing engenders. She enjoyed for so many years an active, caring, beautiful life. She was loved by friends and family because she could give you your space, but be there with her support whenever it was needed. Her smile, her warmth, her companionship, the joy of just having some coffee and schmoozing with you filled everyone with a simple joy and love. There's an ancient, beautiful legend that tells that God once sent an angel to earth to bring back to heaven the three most precious things, worthy of a place next to God. When the angel came to earth, he entered a garden, saw there a rose in bloom, thinking it to be divinely beautiful, plucked up the rose. Next, he passed a house where he saw an infant sleeping serenely in his or her crib. Struck by the child's peaceful smile, he thought that would be worthy of a place in heaven. And after a time worrying about what the third thing would be, he saw a mother devotedly going about her work. He took the mother's love to heaven. Legend describes how shortly thereafter, the rose withered, losing its beauty, and the baby awoke from sleep and began to wail, no longer so peaceful. The only thing that remained in heaven, as it was on earth, was the love of a mother. That is the legacy of Betty Rosenthal, unconditional love, a great friend, amazing great-grandmother and grandmother, a devoted mother, and a wonderful wife. She will be missed, but her goodness lives on in everyone that knew and was touched by her. So we're going to have three speakers who knew her better than I, because a couple of minutes from a loved one is better than Rabbi talking forever. So Terry will speak first, Joe will speak second, and Jerry will speak third.
When my dad passed away, my mom told me that I could speak and I should speak, but to make sure I didn't cry. And I was successful at that. Once again, I'm going to try very hard not to cry and hope that I succeed. Anyway, Mommy, Mom, Bet, Boop, Boopy, for the curly, dark hair that she had in her younger days. Mamacita. These are just some of the names I addressed her by. She had names for me too, including TK and Terry Lou. And if you knew us well and the relationship that she and I had, you know that all of these names came from the heart. Since you're here, you knew her in some way, be it as a relative, a friend of hers, a friend of one of her family members, whatever. You know that she loved everyone and everyone loved her. Not a judgmental woman, and one who forgave very easily. Again, if you're here, you know that she loved mahjong. She played a lot of tennis till Dad got sick. That was when she was about 80. She enjoyed rummy cube, Raina. She taught Raina, and then Raina would beat her. She enjoyed playing on her tablet, and she was kind of good with, for her age, she was pretty good with infotech, or whatever, technology. She and Dad did a lot of traveling, and she told me that she had no regrets. She was a wonderful individual, a loving mom, and she led a wonderfully satisfying life. Her life was enhanced for the last 5 or so years by her awesome, awesome caregivers who became our family. And I would be remiss if I didn't give, oh, I forgot some, I'm sorry, won't put the 3 caregivers, I left something out, Raina. She was also an emergency room volunteer for about 17 years. In my pursuit not to cry, I just wanted to give you a story that made me laugh. When she was in the emergency room after the devastating stroke, I seemed to have an allergy or something with my eyes, and I had pink all up in my eyelids. And here she was after being diagnosed, and they determined that the damage. She could still speak, and she kept saying to me, "Don't wear that pink eyeshadow. I don't like it, and it doesn't look good on you." That was Betty. So as we say goodbye to Mom, we are saying goodbye to a terrific human being, one from whom we could learn a lot of lessons toward a good life. I had you in my life for all these years, Mom, and I will miss you terribly. I already do.
You did wonderful. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. My new sister.
So, good morning. So those of you who don't know me, my last name is Joe Salem. I was Betty's nephew. I'm her sister's son, Sally, who passed away years ago. So I guess, everything you hear this morning is so true. I was, last minute, was told, would you like to speak? I would like to speak. I would have liked to have prepared more. But, very simply, Betty was there for me from my early childhood through the teenage years, college, and slightly beyond. She took a real interest in me. She was always there. What makes it so significant is that she didn't have to be there, right? I'm not really her son, so it is very, Betty and Jack were very giving people, as everyone knows, of their time, of everything they had. They kind of just were, almost like, like that dream couple that you think about. I think Betty lived her life with a sense of obligation and caring, maybe duty, or just simply wanting to do what was right and what she could do. She had a lot of capacity. What also was great about the way Betty was, she was, and they kind of touched upon this earlier, but she was she could put aside her personal feelings and dislikes and just do what, makes sense, what was in everyone's interest. And that's hard to do sometimes, as people. So simply, she was, for myself and many, she was really a rock, And I wanted to share just 2 things that kind of, I think, exemplified the type of person that she was. So there was a time where I actually lived with Betty and Jack, and it was a really an impactful year on me. One of the things that I think about to talk about how Betty was such an advocate, she went to the parent-teacher meeting, not anything disciplinary, just, the parent-teacher meeting. And I didn't think anything of it. She went there, and my father was there. And I got back to my class, and my geography teacher looked at me and said, "Oh, I had that meeting with your aunt and your father." And I said, "Oh, how'd that go?" He goes, "Wow." He said, I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "She really gave it to him. She really gave it to him. She stood up. She didn't like whatever it was, but she stood up for me. And she always stood up for me." And the other thing that I think about, something I learned, and it kind of comes back to you, when I lived with them at Ladd Street, Uncle Jack, I cut the lawn. I took over cutting the lawn somewhat. I always enjoyed it. And there was also, if you knew their community, when you went in, there was a strip of land that for some reason had become untended. No one was taking care of it. And so we went out to the front, and he explained, "I want you to cut this," and okay, no problem. And I said to him, "Uncle Jack," I said, why are we cutting this? This isn't your property. This isn't, as a 13-year-old, I'm just saying, I don't understand. And he said, "Well, I live here, buddy." And he goes, "I want the place to look right." And so without going too much further, years later, I bought my first house, and my neighbor across the street had a beef with the town, and he would not cut that strip that had become overgrown with things in it. And, I thought about how to deal with it, like how am I going to, deal with it? And I had spoken to him, and he explained why he wasn't cutting it. So a couple weeks later, I went back to him, and I said, "Listen," I said, "if you don't mind, I'll take care of it. I'll cut the strip." And I cut that strip for a year, and he finally came back and said, "I'll take care of it." So, and there wasn't something, and I would have never thought of doing that. My first reaction was to go over there and, say, but it worked out. And I guess in the end, what it taught me was that sometimes, there are times when you need to take some responsibility for something that's not really your responsibility, which is what, in a sense, they did, both of them. And, like Terry, it was hard for me. I thought I might come up here and cry, but, I want to thank all the Rosenthals, for sharing, in a sense, their parents, Aunt Betty. And what can I say? I love you, Aunt Betty. I miss you. Thank you.
Wow. Short. Rabbi, I love the dash. I love the story of the dash. Let's face it, 96 years of a good life is a blessing, okay? And Mom was blessed, and we were blessed, sharing all that time with Mom. So thank you. I'm the stoic one, by the way. So thank you for the 68 years that I had with Mom. You and Dad set a very high bar with the warmth, generosity, and your strong family connections. Take a breath. She said, "Take a breath." I'm taking a breath. So, let me say this, my own story about Mom. I'll cut to the chase. Not long ago, I had a discussion with Mom. I used to go over to our house when I was visiting from Chicago early in the morning and have a cup of coffee with Mom before she took a shower, got ready for the day. And I once asked her about those yahrzeit candles, the little candles that we light to commemorate the death of a loved one in the family. And she said to me something I'll never forget. She said, I light the candles generally, she said, but I don't need candles to remember my mom and dad. She said, I think about mom and dad, your grandma and papi, always. And I know about that. I think about my father a lot. Okay, Jack taught me so much since Dad died. On occasion, I talk to Dad, and I'm going to talk to Mom also. So we're going to start that conversation now, Mom. Thank you, and we'll talk soon.
I have a little checklist of things you said to me yesterday, but you've covered them all, so I won't repeat anything. But I thought of two things that are important. Talking with you yesterday and watching you today in particular interacting with friends and family, it's pretty clear to me that Betty's legacy lives on vibrantly in your lives. The kindness, the warmth, just the caring, that all the things she stood for are inculcated in the people that you are. The other thing that I add is, when I ask the family often, what's the turn of phrase that most strikes you? In the hard times, you gotta hang in there, Betty would say. And in all the rest of the times, always strive to do the best that you can, and that's a good way to live your life. You're not gonna get it perfect, but living the right way, making as many good choices as you can, that's the legacy of Betty Rosenthal. And for all these reasons, she will be sorely missed. As long as we remember she does live on, granting her one portion of immortality, and the goodness that touched almost all of you carries on too, granting her a second portion of life eternal. So we pray that Betty's soul will enter the great highway that leads to our eternal home. May she know everlasting rest and peace in another better world, a world where all families will one day be reunited in happiness, in good health, and in peace. And let us say, Amen. Pause for just a few moments of silent remembrance before we go to the memorial prayer. Our final prayer here in the sanctuary is El Malei Rachamim. It's the prayer in the Jewish tradition that prays for the soul of our dear departed. And we'll ask everyone to just rise for a few moments in the Hebrew and then in the English, which we'll read together on the back of the insert, for God full of compassion. El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'malot Kedoshim U'Torim K'Zohar Rakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Brucha Bat Eliyahu Shalcha La'olama B'Gan Eden Tehei Menuchata Ana Ba'al Harachamim Hastireha B'Seter Kinafecha La'olamim Utzror B'Tzorcha Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata V'tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava V'nomar Amen. Read the memorial prayer on the back of the insert together. God, full of compassion, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest under the wings of your presence to Betty Rosenthal, Brucha Bat Eliyahu, who has entered eternity. Master of mercy, let her find refuge forever in the shadow of your wings. Let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. The eternal God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, please be seated for a moment for a couple of quick announcements. We'll be going next to Mount Lebanon Cemetery. There are options beside your GPS in your phone. On the back of the outside, there are directions not using Easy Pass. If you want to save 4 minutes, you, instead of making the left turn onto, instead of making the turn onto Georgia Avenue, make the turn onto the ICC in the direction of I-95. It'll save you 4 minutes. You can also follow these directions or follow your GPS. In lieu of flowers, moral contributions can be made to the Parkinson's Foundation. After the burial service, the meal of consolation will be in the community room at Whiteley Park Towers, 5450 Whiteley Park Terrace in Bethesda. And there'll be a Shiva Minyan tonight and tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Any other announcements needed? And please follow the directions of the mortuary for our next steps.